Yeah, it's Sam and Shane from Simplicity Living. Welcome. We are looking forward to having a chat with you about property. So thanks very much for joining. And obviously not the property market, but also very specifically Simplicity Living and what we're doing and how we can help you. So what I think we'll do today is we'll probably talk for about sort of 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers because we're sure there'll be a lot of them. And we'll answer every single one on this webinar. And you can ask about anything to do with the property market, with what we're doing, with how we feel about things generally. And we'll try and keep it property focused. So I'm just going to kick off with just a few slides just to put this all in perspective, which is really sort of, why are we here and why has Simplicity Living come about? And I think it was, I'm just going to share the screen with you here and just share a few slides just so you understand where we are. So there we just see there. There we go. So as you know, Simplicity as a company has been around for 6 years now, and really we're about giving New Zealanders dignity in retirement. And how you do that is you give people choices, because a life with choices is a life with dignity. And what we do is we make people more money. So more money gives you more choices gives you more dignity. So what has that got to do with property? Well, if you think about what we do, we're a not-for-profit company owned by a charity there. You see about 50% of our fees go to charity. But if you think about how you make people wealthier and the big financial decisions they make in their lives, one of them is KiwiSaver, so we started off there. The other one is investment funds, which are the same as our KiwiSaver funds, same fees and so on, same investments, but you just have access to your money. And that's so people who are, saving for a house and don't want to do it outside of KiwiSaver, or saving for their retirement, or are investing their money in retirement, that's so they have an option. The third one we wanted to do was first home loans, because we want to get people into their first homes faster. And we have an incredibly competitive rate. I think it's very often the cheapest home loan rate in the country. And then we started thinking about this whole housing issue, which was to say that there's a whole lot of people out there who can't afford to buy their first home and are stuck in this crazy rental trap. And so I'm just going to just cut out here and stop sharing and just introduce you to Shane, because I'd like to sort of basically tell you a story. Here we go. Basically tell you a story of how this came about. So about 2 years ago, we were thinking about how can we invest our money in a way that returns more than we get in the bank, because bank returns and term deposit rates are lousy, and we have hundreds of millions of dollars in term deposits and bank deposits at any one time. How can we increase that return, make it a really stable, reliable return, and then also do some real good with it? We started thinking about rental housing, and really, if it was just Simplicity doing this, what do we know about building houses, operating houses, and so on? And then Sir Stephen Tyndall, who's our patron, introduced me to the character on my right, your left now, on one of his building sites. And Shane, could you just sort of run through that first meeting and what occurred to you about the conversations that we had?
Yeah, so we, as a privately owned business, controlled by my wife Anna and I, will have completed 700 homes. And it occurred to us that within 3 years of having sold those homes, predominantly to first-time home buyers, any advantage we were giving the housing sector would be lost, because those buyers of our more affordable house prices, and we've sold those 700 houses at $30 million under valuation. But after 3 years, all of those buyers are free to sell, and they will invariably sell at open market prices. Why wouldn't you? So there is no enduring long-term benefit to providing New Zealanders with dry, warm, high quality, secure tenure, more affordable homes. So yeah, and we had a certain set of skills. We have a formula that creates a very high quality home at a much reduced cost compared to the rest of the market. So we thought, well, what do we do with all of this knowledge and all of this energy we've got? We can keep going and providing these first-time homebuyers with that advantage, but that's going to help hundreds and potentially thousands of people. But we want to help tens of thousands of people and over 100 years or more. So that's where the funds from Simplicity, our expertise combined in a not-for-profit framework has this opportunity now to provide a real solution to our housing problem.
Yeah, so that was sort of the light bulb moment, which was that we had an opportunity, Shane and Anna via NZ Living, to combine their ability to build and operate the homes and our ability to fund it without having to go to the banks and borrow a lot of money and get caught up in the short-term thinking, was able to create, it's almost like a new property class, isn't it, of a new option for New Zealanders, yeah?
Yeah, it's a new option. And if you look at the housing continuum, on the far end, you've got emergency housing, then you've got state housing, you've got the very high end at the far right-hand end of the spectrum. But there's this big swath of people that are in that sort of middle part of our community that either can't or don't want to be controlled by an Australian-owned bank with a big long-term mortgage, paying all sorts of exorbitant interest rates with profits going offshore. So, people, if they chose to rent in our secure secure tenure homes, they then have choices as to what else they could do with their money, as opposed to putting it all into a house, which is your normal Kiwi thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, Shane? Most New Zealanders think about owning a home for the long term, but in countries like Germany, half of the population rent forever, right? And they rent because they're doing it with a landlord who wants them to be in the house for the long term, wants them to think of it as their own home, paint it the colours they want, have the pets that they want in there, all that sort of stuff. So long-term renting is unusual for New Zealand, but it's very, very common around the world. And we thought we wanted to introduce that as an asset class. And also from an investment point of view, it's really stable, reliable returns, better than we would get in the bank. I'd say also one other thing too, because Simplicity is owned by the Simplicity Foundation, a charity, we spend a lot of time, what I call funding ambulances at the bottom of the cliff, right? People who are in trouble, homeless, hungry, all of the issues with people having to be in forever short-term rentals and turning it over, changing neighbourhoods, not really being able to become part of a community. The great thing about long-term rental accommodation for those people who can't afford to buy is that actually, it's kind of like building a fence at the top of the cliff, right, rather than funding the ambulance at the bottom, because a whole lot of social problems start when people don't have warm, dry, affordable, stable housing. And if they did that, that would help prevent a whole lot of problems. So that was a really huge, side benefit. As an investment case, it stacks up. We can now do it because we're working with you on this one, but it also has some great social impacts as well. Shane, I wonder if I could just pass over to you because you're the expert here, and we'll get on to questions soon, but could you talk through what you have done and what we will be doing under Simplicity Living? I'm just going to throw up just a couple of pictures here so Shane can talk through. We'll just show you a picture of a typical development that we would have. Sorry, that was the nice, pretty picture of when we announced this thing post-COVID. And that's actually one of your building sites behind there. Yeah, whereabouts is that?
That's in Point, England.
Okay.
So those were 75 apartments we built for first-time home buyers, but the site that we're standing on at the 1.5 metre COVID safe distancing is where we have 132 apartments currently under construction. The first 69 of those will be available from March of next year. And then the balance of 63 will follow in May or June of next year. And then we've got another site over in Oranga, which is very near Onehunga. The way that we...
Actually, I'll tell you what, Paul, I'll just stop there for a second, Shane. So the two people on the left-hand side, Shane and Anna, the heroes of the moment there, that old grey wizened bugger is me, and then on the right is Andrew, our Chief Investment Officer. Can tell you that's the closest he'll ever get to a digger in his life there. So we'll just go to the next one here, the next picture there for you, Shane, because here is a typical, so we'll show a map in a minute of where we're building, but here is a typical example of what we'll build. Yeah, could you just talk through what it's made of, how it gets built, what are the cool advantages of living in a place like that?
Okay, so the base master planning fabric, if you like, of a site of ours is typically 1/3 building footprint, 1/3 landscaping, and 1/3 at-grade car parking and circulation. So they're quite spacious. They're only 3 stories high predominantly in locations like this. That's a very economic, very efficient way of constructing. And over our 700 homes, we've developed a production line approach centered on improved productivity. And with that gives us the ability to price point these things very well. We've even, thrown in complete whiteware packages, blinds, curtains, and the like, to try to make sure that the occupants aren't burdened by unnecessary extra costs. They're very low maintenance. They're very solidly built. We've got full brick facades. The long-term maintenance costs are extremely low because there are no external painted surfaces. We have a solid structure, as I say. The concrete slab and wall system goes all the way to the roof. So that means they're very quiet to live in. They're very warm, very stable temperature, and very spacious. So we don't waste a lot of space in internal circulation. It's all usable space. We have storage, ample car parking, and they're just a very relaxing environment.
So Shane, what does building out of concrete and brick, well, if you're a tenant in one of these things, what does that actually mean? What are the advantages of having brick and concrete as building materials?
Yeah, well, the typical New Zealand construction method is stick build, I refer to it. So it's a piece of 4x2, or for you younger people, 90 by 45 millimetre timber framing, with all sorts of glues and products and insulation and that sort of thing, trying to make up a quality intertenancy wall or a floor system. We've kept it really simple and gone for the genuine article, and something that's going to last at least 100 years. And I wouldn't be surprised if these buildings are still there in 200 years. So it gives you a very stable environment to, in terms of thermal mass, in terms of acoustics. So yeah, you do feel the difference when you walk into these buildings as opposed to other stick-built equivalents.
And I guess the other advantage is we're building them for 100 years, right? So brick and concrete lasts a long time, eh?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All the glazing is double glazed, solar.
So let me just hop out for a second. We'll come back to that in a minute and show you the map. Can I ask you, let's ask the tough questions, eh?
Mm.
So concrete is not an environmentally sensitive material. A lot of people are saying that we should be building out of wood, not concrete. Can you just sort of, as it were, make the case for why we do it out of concrete and what we are doing to mitigate the carbon impacts of concrete in the buildings?
So with concrete, we have got options now where we can have 10%, 20% or 30% reduced carbon content.
Mm-hmm.
So, you pay a little bit of a premium for that. We think that's good, a good investment. But it's strange that people don't blink an eye at using concrete in a footpath or in a driveway, but they might sort of frown at it being used in a home, which to me seems the wrong way around. We should find an alternative for our hundreds of thousands of kilometres of footpaths around
Mm-hmm.
the country and driveways, and use the concrete in a place where it can serve multiple uses and to extend the life of the asset. So the most important jumpstart on trying to reduce your carbon is avoiding short life cycles. So we build these things to last for 100 years or more, but the concrete is doing acoustic performance, structural performance, fire rating. There are multiple
keeping it warm too,
services,
right? Yeah.
and the thermal, correct.
Yeah.
So when you try to save a little bit of concrete, and we will need to complete the analysis, but I'm certain that there is more carbon in trying to fabricate a home that is built from the multiple of other materials that you need for medium density. So if it's a house in a suburb on a greenfield site,
mm-hmm.
you don't have the same intertenancy issues with medium density. So the argument is not applicable there. But the thing that we don't like about that is that's burning up valuable land.
Right.
And we don't intend to go out into the pastures and turn good farmland or horticultural land into residential.
So what you're saying is that if we built 3-story apartment blocks out of timber, that'd be very expensive. The carbon in transporting the timber, gluing it, putting all the extra materials you need to put it in, would actually mean it would be environmentally a worse solution?
I believe that is where the science is going to take us.
Yeah,
But we need to do that analysis. It's a very new field, and I think it's dangerous to jump to a conclusion that one is better than the other. I'm very confident that it will be proven in the very near future that our system is extremely carbon friendly by comparison to the alternatives for medium density.
And just in case, what are we doing in terms of, landscaping, tree planting, all that sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, so with each home that we deliver, we're looking at 200 native plants planted to help offset the carbon used in creating these homes.
Yeah.
And the intention is to go native rather than exotic. There's a little story around if you plant a kauri tree or a totara or a pahutakawa today, in 200 years' time, those trees will be mature enough to build a waka out of. And that was the old Maori analogy. So if our buildings last 200 years, and for each one we planted 200 trees, there are 200 potential wakas that can be built in the future.
One of the things I love about the story is we start out talking about apartments, but then we come back to planting native trees, eh? Isn't it wonderful? So, so there's all of those, and I guess the Simplicity Foundation as well. We plant a new native tree for every member. We planted 130,000 as well, and we're going to look at getting these apartments to being carbon neutral, carbon positive, as a long-term goal. Yeah. So let's go back. Thanks, Shane. Let's just go back to we'll just go back to our share screen here. So just want to have another chat about the developments that we have. So excuse me for a second, let me just click on this. So that's one example, Shane. Let's go to another one. Oh, there is. So that's could you basically talk us through how these apartments function? What would the user experience be in these in terms of walking up to them? Do they have lifts, corridors, all that sort of stuff? And what would be the shared common space? Because this is an example of what we're building in Oranga, right?
This is Oranga, just on Waitangi Road, very leafy suburb, about 1 kilometre south of One Tree Hill. And again, same formula: 1/3 building footprint, 1/3 car park circulation, and 1/3 landscaping. If you look at that darker building on the left-hand side, you can see a 3-story stair lobby there. So unlike other developments where they might have a narrow corridor feeding 10, 15, 20, 30 apartments, and it feeling a bit like a three-star hotel, these are very personal in nature. So that stair lobby only services 6 apartments, 2 on the ground floor, 2 on level 1, 2 on level 2. And we find that the residents in our developments all become friends as much as they are neighbours. You get revolving dinner parties and people looking out for each other. So you've got a whole community in this particular one of 60 apartments, but they're broken into 8 stairwells, so 8 subclusters of residents within that community.
Okay.
And what we find, the age group goes from 80 to 18. We have babysitters for the young children. Okay. We have pet sitters. We have people exchanging information on where to get the best haircuts, takeaways, how to get their bike serviced. We've got lock-up bike stores with chargers in them for the e-bikes. We've got e-car chargers.
Could you just so talk me through? So you're going to walk up and down. You have a nice light stairwell there, and that means that no one's walking up more than two flights of stairs, right, to get there. Can you talk about downstairs there for universal access, wheelchair access, disabled access? What's happening there?
Yeah, so all of the ground floor units you can access via a ramp. The doors are extra width, so our doors are typically around 810 millimeter leaf size, which is larger than your typical 710. And they're just very roomy in the dining space and the living space. Very short but wide corridors. So we haven't specifically designed them at this point for disabled persons access. That means a whole lot of different designs for showers and so on. But it may be that with part of the portfolio in future projects, we do design that in.
I guess for elderly people though, it's single level ground floor, no stairs. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And small gardens out front, and then the rest is common property, so that we can keep that quality of land. landscape service.
And I guess there's a theme here, folks, because our members will be funding these via our, KiwiSaver funds, investment funds, and so on, and owning them for 100 years. We really want them to be places that people want to live in, for 100 years. And that means the word I use is sort of gracious. It's got to be the doors have to be a little bigger, the corridors have to be a little wider, because you have to. It just has to be a nice place to live, and it's a different set of motivations. When you're building something to last 100 years, as opposed to building it to sell it. You tend to, the selling ones, you put a bit of external bling on, but you're always trying to skimp and make it as small as possible in order to sell it. But from our point of view, because we're owning it. So can you just talk through, Shane, if you talk about the actual size of the apartments, how do they measure up versus the average apartment sold in Auckland or in New Zealand?
Well, the one bed is 52 square meters plus balcony. And we always have a balcony that's 1.8 meters deep. So you can get a table and a couple of chairs around it and a barbecue or whatever you want out there. The two beds start at 65 square meters and go to 84, depending on the configuration. So, the average two-beddie out there is closer to 55. Okay. So we're 10 to 20 square meters larger, and our three-beddies are 95 square meters or around there. Okay. And I see a lot of three-beddies at 75 and 80 square meters.
So we're talking about sort of, if I was to pick an average, they're about 20% bigger than the average apartment out there?
15 to 20. 15 they've all got storage areas, typically two big general purpose cupboards.
Okay. Can I just talk about one more thing about that picture? We have Māori names, and there's some Māori motifs in there. Can you just talk through making them, the artistic overlay that you put on there? Because there's some really interesting stuff you do with sculpture too, right?
Yeah, we've got a kamatua named Jerry Norman and a sculptor named Anton Ford. If you want to Google Ford art, you'll see how clever that man is. They are both from Ngāti Pawa, and then those patterns you see on the walls there are traditional Maori patterns, of which there are 9 forms, and Nahina Hohaia is one of the keepers of that knowledge, and she is for managing the use of those weaving patterns, and that's all built in with our brickwork again, and they look stunning. The artwork doesn't do them justice. When you see them in real life, it's quite stunning.
Awesome. Just go through now. We'll just have a quick look at the where we are building and where we've bought land to build. Clearly, this is part of a sort of a huge long-term plan, right, to build, own and rent over 10,000 homes all around the country. Can you talk through, Shane, the two orange dots are the ones that are actually in build right now, and the greys are where we built land?
Yep. So what we're aiming to do is to find the locations that are where people would like to live. We have to have amenity, have to have good transport connectivity, and it has to have good services, so retail, gymnasiums, walking tracks, and those sort of areas. So the two orange ones are the two projects we've just briefly looked at. The one up there towards the Tamaki estuary, that's in Point, England, that's Kupanga. The other orange one is Oranga, which we've just seen the artwork on. And then the blue ones, firstly the one in Panmure, that's at 80 Mount Wellington Highway. And we're looking at just under 300 apartments in there, within 5 minutes walk of the Amity rail station, bus and rail station. And that's got an abundance of amenity in that area. We're actually going to about 11 stories high with one of those buildings, fully lifted. So again, we don't have one lift, we'll have 2, and they'll be good size so everyone can fit everything they want in it and don't have to wait too long. There'll be artwork on that one available very shortly. And the other 2 dots are over in Mount Albert or Owaraka, and we have 51 and 60 apartments coming there with construction start mid next year.
Awesome. And as we go on, this will just get busier and busier. And then if you think about, one of the big questions we have is, when will we start building outside of Auckland?
Yeah, the thinking is we need to make sure our team is really strong as we grow. One of the failings of many companies with such huge aspirations is that they try to run before they can walk. Mm-hmm. So we want to establish a really strong, expanded team in Auckland. So it's probably about year 3 that, right. And Tauranga is screaming out for our kind of product, as is Wellington. we have the ministers asking, can you come? Can you come?
Yeah.
And we're just being a little bit patient.
And obviously, we've been and spoken to the mayors and councils of towns like Hamilton, Christchurch, Dunedin. I mean, it seems to be that because of this housing shortage, pretty much everyone wants this, but we will do this in a methodical manner, remembering this is members' money that we are investing here, so we want to do it very sensibly and scalably and repeatably around the country. Yeah, cool. Well, look, folks, if you'd like to ask a question, we've got a whole bunch of questions there as well. I'm just going to get through a few that came through early, and then we'll get through them. So this is going to be a last question standing, right? So it's going to be, yeah, so we'll get ready. So the first one was, why are we doing this? Why Simplicity and not other KiwiSaver funds? Well, look, I think other KiwiSaver funds will follow, but someone's got to do it first, right? So, and it was also a confluence of, it was really good luck that, or by design, with Stephen Tyndall, that he got us together. Yeah, it was serendipity. How are we funding it? Well, we're 100% funding it out of our KiwiSaver and investment funds. And we're taking a fairly low risk approach to this. So there is a property development risk in this, although I would have to say, Shane, because you're building at about 35% below the market now, that there's actually, that's de-risked because we're building, I mean, to give you an example, an average apartment, what would that cost? Land, building, everything, right down to the salt and pepper shaker.
Somewhere between 450 and 525,000.
Wow, and that's including land?
Including land.
Including land, wow, that's
and
huge.
That would value at 650, 700.
Right, so it gives you an idea. We're building them for about 500. They value up on the day we complete them at 650 to 700. That's the benefit of doing it in scale and running it like a manufacturing operation, yeah? Okay, so that's how we're funding it out of our various funds, and you can go into our website and see in detail. We are actually not committing very much money to this in terms of our overall funds, because we have, $4.3 billion under management right now. But as we grow, we will, ramp up commitment here. We certainly wouldn't envisage it being, even when we had 10,000 homes, and that we have no intention of it being anything more than between 10 and 20% of any one fund would be in this housing, and that would be providing incredibly reliable returns, because the last bills you don't pay are your rent and your mortgage. The next question is, with returns down and the property market in decline, how is this good for investors? Well, it's really good for investors because we're buying things at a reduced price right now, right? So an awful lot of how much money you make in property is you can buy and build when you're one of the very few buyers in town, right? And that's sort of the case here. Can you just give us a feeling, Shane, because we get offered property all the time. Can you give us an example of what's happened in the last 12 months to the value of bare land in Auckland?
Middle of 21 would have been the high water mark, and I'm expecting the low water mark will be in about 12 months' time, but it's pretty low now from where it was, and I would think it's at least 30% off. So it's a great buying opportunity for us now to operate counter-cyclically from the usual market. Those booms and busts have been around for my 35 year in the industry, and it's inevitable. So we sold our last home in March of 2021, expecting any day now there's going to be a correction. Correction finally came in the end of November, but there are a lot of developers out there and a lot of landholders that are under enormous stress right now. But because we can operate at our own pace, we're not going to rush in and do anything silly. The time is on our side. We're in a great space.
And our 3 criteria for buying land are
location, not just price.
Yeah. So we're going to do this very methodically. We can afford to pay cash for land, which means we're a highly desirable buyer, but we will be buying it at much lower prices, and just being very careful about it. So the next question is, how does this fit within the Simplicity's ethical investing framework? It fits incredibly well. First of all, is if you think about the ethics of building warm, dry, safe, affordable housing, to give you an idea too on affordability, we've just priced up the first apartments, and it's hard to know exactly, but we feel they're around about 10% below what you'd say market rent, somewhere in that area, 10 to 15% below, and with the offer of very, very long-term tenancies, right? So people can spend the rest of their lives, as long as they're well behaved as a tenant, they can spend the rest of their lives there if they want to. So, and ethically also, we're paying a lot of attention to the building of these things, minimizing waste. Can you just give us an example, Shane? How much waste do we generate versus what you think the average is per apartment?
If you measure the number of horrible big 9 cubic meter skips, you've all seen those trucks around the city with the big skips full of rubbish on, and construction accounts for 50% of our landfill. So it's really important that we, with our production mindset, reduce that. So our average waste is the equivalent of about 100 millimeters deep times the floor area. And we're trying to push that down to 75 and then 50 millimeters. The average I've taken a straw poll sampling of a couple of other developers, and the norm is around 250 millimeters. So about 2.5 times the amount of construction waste. And that is purely as a result of our production mindset. We don't bring stuff to site that needs to be put into a skip. We only bring what we need. And that's a constant improvement area for all of us.
And we're doing the tree planting program, and we're looking at low content carbon. So Simplicity is a sort of organization that takes the ethics of this very seriously. And we think we found a really wonderfully ethical way of building, operating homes, which will also, really look after a lot of New Zealanders. The last question that we had just before the seminar: how does this fit within our passive investment strategy? Look, it starts out being a little active, and it's a very small amount of money in the general scheme of things. But if you imagine, as we build a portfolio of these homes, it becomes more and more passive and more diverse. And so basically, ultimately, it becomes a and remember, we make no money in the middle, so it's great. That's a great return, and then it's a good solid return. And then also, as the value of houses goes up, obviously this portfolio goes up across the nation. So it ends up being extremely passive, which is exactly where we want to get to. Okay, so let's get to some online questions. There are 23 of them so far there, Shane, so let's get into it. So the first one we answered, why haven't other funds been into it? So that's cool. We talked about that. We're just the first, and someone will come in there. Next question is, how do you ensure that you don't support controversial subdivisions such as the one in Nelson, which had a petition of 13,000 people trying to protect a currently rural area from urbanisation? Do you do background checks, as it were, on whether there is any community opposition to a particular site?
We do take a path of very low resistance to our resource consenting. We don't want to put members' funds in any sort of risk of an environment court type issue. So predominantly our homes will be built in brownfields locations near good transport corridors. Much of Auckland was built 70 to 90 years ago, and those buildings that were built there weren't designed to last more than about their current life. So, for example, 80 Mount Wellington Highway, that was used, I think it was a big factory, I forget the name of the operation, but that closed about 10 years ago. So that site is ripe for regeneration. So what better use than to convert it into housing, with 1/3 of its site being landscaping. But we are within the, we certainly wouldn't buy a contentious piece of land. It would be zoned for the use that we intend to.
And it's fair to say we're brownfield developers, right? We want to just develop existing sites within the inner suburbs of a city, and therefore you get much better utilisation of public transport networks, infrastructure, and so we're not greenfields developers. We don't want to buy bare land on the fringes of any city there. There's a great question. And the next one is, would we make more money if we just built ourselves, freeing up capital for more development and building many more houses? Well, the answer is the issue is not actually the money, the capital. The issue is the ability to build the homes, right? So our intent. So the answer is we could do that. We don't actually think we will make any more money. In fact, we're taking much more risk because you're building and you're selling it at a particular part of the market. The intention here was to not do this as like an equity or a property investment. It was to create a substitute for our fixed interest investment, where we're getting very low returns from government bonds in the bank. So the intention's quite different there. It would turn us into a very different company. We would be purely a property development and selling business. That's not what we want to do. We want to create a new housing market, give people a whole lot of options that they wouldn't otherwise have in terms of long-term stable rents, but most importantly there as well, generate long-term stable returns for our members. So it would be a different sort of business. Now, In the future, could we get into selling a few of these things? We had old stock and we need to recycle. Yes, you'd never say never, but that's not our intention for the first 10,000 homes. So the next question from Jason. In some areas, we're seeing the housing density increase to a factor of more than 5. With it brings the cars that people drive with an area that can't cope with it. Has Simplicity Living thought about integrating a vehicle sharing service for residents as an added amenity?
We have looked at it, but it hasn't worked in other developments we've observed. We are designing our car parks to be just minimum adequate today, but also to be able to be converted into a different use. For example, on a 3-story walk-up type site, the car park area may be swapped out for an additional building. In Mount Wellington, Panmure, we've built our 3 car park levels there with the same floor-to-floor height as an apartment floor. So they could be converted into another use, be it office or more apartments.
Or indeed more landscaping if we wanted to, right? Yeah, indeed. We could do that.
Tennis court, whatever.
So the other question is from Felicia. What's wrong with using stone instead of concrete? Is it a cost issue?
Stone.
I mean, could you? Is there anything where you could substitute concrete for stone? Or not really?
Probably just on the horizontal surfaces. You need reinforcing steel to be structurally compliant. Ever since Christchurch, we're under a whole world of pain with seismic design these days.
Okay, so that's your answer there. We need to put steel in there, and it wouldn't work with stone. Okay. Here's a question from Facebook. Is the aim to benefit the renter or investors? I'm a bit confused about what you're offering. What is the return for investors? Well, the answer there is both. You can actually, this is a genuine win-win here. It's a benefit for investors because it generates a stable return like you would get from fixed interest, but at a higher rate of return over time. So there is no way we would be doing this or funding this if it wasn't in the best interest of investors. But in the process of doing that, you can also actually provide long-term, stable, warm, dry, affordable housing. So this is this confluence we said, Simplicity would not be hiring a for-profit company which was designed to build the minimum quality house to maximize the short-term returns. That's not what we do. That's not what we want to do. So we actually have quite a beautiful model here. We'll see if it works out in practice, but so far so very good. And the idea is to benefit investors primarily because it's their money, but also to provide warm, dry, affordable homes, which has a fantastic social benefit and also benefits renters. Remember, the property industry is like the finance industry. It's a phyllo pastry of fees, right? So if you take those fees out, you have a lot of goodness which you can distribute. Most of it goes to the investors, some of it goes to the renters. Everyone ends up winning except all of those people who are otherwise slicing and dicing the snouts and the trough in between. But it's a very, very valid question that you've asked. So Liv Lewis Long, why are the apartments still so expensive, still unaffordable versus the minimum wage? Well, the idea is not to provide, in fact, you physically cannot provide apartments that could suit everybody, no matter how little they earn. In this model, you actually need government subsidy. That's a social housing question, and this is not social housing. This is affordable housing for many people. And Liv, it's interesting, if you look at what we're renting them for now, they are 10 to 15% below the market, which is a very good deal for renters, particularly considering that they are bigger, warmer, drier, higher quality apartments. So you're getting a better apartment at a lower price than we think the market's offering. But I'm sorry, just that the physical reality of what it costs to build in this country, even for us, means that we cannot provide them at a price which would be affordable for everybody. In that case, that becomes part of the social housing fabric, which really is the responsibility of the government. Question from Facebook. Shane, do you have ideas about what alternative materials could be used for footpaths and driveways? Yeah, you've asked the question, mate. Have you got the answer?
Oh, there's got to be something in reconstituted rubber from tyres. How many times have you walked down a footpath and come across a trip hazard or a tree root that has pushed it up? There are millions or billions of tyres around the world that are needing to be recycled. There's got to be something to do with secondhand tires.
I'll tell you what, if you've ever lived in Europe, there's plenty of bricks and stones on pavements as well, right? So those materials exist. Another question from Anonymous: do the first apartments have other infrastructure, for example, cafes, services, and shops?
One decision we've made is not to go into a neighborhood and cannibalize the existing business people, rather to complement them and provide them with customers. There's also something around getting out of your development and meeting the people in the wider community. We've thought about gymnasiums in our developments as another example, or creche. But when there are sufficient providers within walking distance, we think on balance it's better for those providers to be supported by our, if you want to meet a new partner in life, it's possibly better for you to go to your local neighborhood gym as opposed to the gym within your building. That could become complicated.
So, well,
you're casting your net wider.
To use an example, like we could put a big swimming pool in big developments, right? That generates a lot of noise. It's a tremendous amount of expense. Wouldn't it be better if we built the development close to a public swimming pool, right? Where everyone's together. That gets better utilized. It gets better maintained, all of those sorts of things.
And there's a $30 million water park within 300 meters walk of Panmure.
Oh, really? Wow, cool.
Lagoon Leisure Centre.
Awesome. So very good question here from Anonymous. How are the first builds being funded before they generate any returns? Do Simplicity members have to wear those costs via their KiwiSaver investment funds? Great question. So we thought about that. What we've effectively done is we have the KiwiSaver investment funds that are funding these first builds are getting a return of 10% per annum as they write out the checks to build these things. And then when the developments are completed, and that's in agreement with Public Trust, our trustee, so there is a return from day one for KiwiSaver and investment funds. It's actually a 10% return. So in the context of where the markets have been going, it's a fantastic return right now. And then when they get completed, they will be revalued, and we would, in nearly all instances, expect another revaluation up. So the KiwiSaver investment fund members who are funding this will get all of the benefits of the capital uplift, and they will get a 10% return along the way before they're finished. So it's a fantastic question, because our members should not be out of pocket as a consequence of it choosing to us, and in fact they're doing very well out of it. From Sandy, a question: great idea having a ground level for the elderly. I agree New Zealand needs to look at long-term rentals, and love the idea that you could start in the top story and move to the ground as you get older. It's a great idea. But have a community wrapped around as long-term rentals. They adapt as your lifestyle needs change. And Sandy, that's a great observation. And certainly we did a lot of work on this beforehand, looking at markets like the UK, Germany, Spain, Australia, America, Canada, as to how this happens. And look, as I think I mentioned before, 50% of Germans live in rented accommodation. So there's a lot of accumulated wisdom about how you develop communities here. And we're really excited to have Anna, Shane's partner, is going to be spearheading the idea about how do we turn these into communities that people want to spend the rest of their lives in. It's a huge issue for us, right? And I think it's ultimately to my mind, the two hallmarks of success will be, what is the quality of the house that people are living in, and then what is the quality of the community and the people around them, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it may be that some, I can just imagine in 30 or 40 years' time, us having at least one resident that has been there as a young, part of a young couple, moved from a 2-bedder to a 3-bedder when they've had a couple of children perhaps, and then maybe downsize to a 1-bedder later in life. So staying within the portfolio, maybe changing development sites, but staying as a Simplicity resident.
Yeah, fantastic. Another question from Anonymous: how do the apartments get filled in and taken? Is it a first served basis?
Well, we've just sent out our registration of interest webpage. So, and I think we were going to post that to everybody.
Yes, we have
already got that.
Yeah.
So we're taking registrations of interest now. And Simplicity members were given a first heads up.
They were, yeah, so, and they can come and look in there. And then obviously we'll go through the normal vetting process. We want to have very high quality tenants here. So it's not first come, first served. That's where we'll get everybody. We will ask everybody what they want to do, how they would fit in. And, it's a process of trying to fill up one of these developments. Means there's a lot of applicants and, interviews and reference checks and all those sorts of things. The idea is to get really high quality community in each one of them. Yeah. So there are no hard and fast rules about how we would do that. From Malcolm Cox, will there be any developments outside Auckland? I think we just mentioned, Malcolm, when we build up capacity in Auckland, and then we will expand. Probably first cab off the rank is Tauranga, then maybe Wellington, but we'll see. This is a few years away yet. Maybe the Hawke's Bay, as the Hawke's Bay is one of my favourite parts in the whole world. At some stage, I would love. Maybe I'd love to retire myself and Simplicity Village in Hawke's Bay. So, listen, we can never say never, mate, but it will just depend on. There's a whole bunch of different things there, but we'll be taking it slowly and very deliberately. Yeah. Wayne, what percentage of Simplicity investments will be in this? Well, actually, at the moment, it's a maximum of 2.5% in any one of our funds. We intend it to be, within the next three years or so, depending on the fund, but no more than 10%, and typically no more than 5%. So it's going to be one of many investments in these funds, and because of the size of our business as it grows, we can afford to put a lot into this, and yet it still be a relatively small percentage. Through this, we discuss this with Public Trust, our supervisor, just to make sure that it's very prudent. It's no rush of blood to the head. We're going to take it slowly and methodically and ramp it up and make it work. From James's point of view, do the upper level apartments in Oranga and Point England have lift access?
Not in the walk-ups, but we do have lifted product going into the Mount Wellington Highway, Panmure. So I expect we'll end up with about half of our portfolio will be walk-up and the other half will be lifted. So there'll be plenty of all types. There's a question there from Malcolm, could a tenant buy? The thinking at the moment, Malcolm, is that it's really simple, and we are not distract ourselves using other models. I know there are other developers out there doing that. It takes a lot of funding sort of support. Ideally, people who are enjoying a lower than market rental in our properties will be able to save faster should they want to buy somewhere else. But no, we want these homes available to rotate through as many people as we can.
And from an anonymous attendee, how is the rent price set? And will it be affordable for those whose only income is national superannuation?
What we're doing is taking there are various databases giving us the average rent in each part of Auckland for various typologies. We're taking a look at that, and then we are typically pitching it below that 10 to 15% kind of range. We'll just feel our way. There's got to be a balance between what the investors share and what the residents' benefit is. But we've got those two levers that we can play with, and through the efficiencies, we think we'll be able to please everybody. And from Felicia, I missed this. How does it work for members of Simplicity? Felicia, it will be a great investment. It's a great long-term, stable, steady investment, as opposed to putting it in the bank and into term deposits. We will we'll fully intend to get better returns for investors with very, very, very stable, secure cash flow there. From an anonymous attendee, how long do Simplicity investors have to be in KiwiSaver before registering one's interest to rent? You don't have to be a Kiwi Simplicity member at all. Anyone can register an interest. We want to make sure we get the highest quality community. And while all Simplicity members are very high quality, there are also people out there who are not members of Simplicity who may want to rent, and we'll look at that as well. From another question, what are the rental terms, i.e. how do you set the rent and how long are the leases? Well, the rents will be pitched below market, as we said. The term, we are looking at perhaps having a 1-year initial term and then flicking that into a longer term option where you have security as a resident, but can give notice to us, I think 1 month, something like that. Yeah. But, with the knowledge that we aren't going to sell these products out from under you like the majority of the rental pool out there across the country, the security of knowing that the landlord is going to be around for 100 years and that product is going to be owned by that landlord for that period of time should give enormous confidence that we won't be looking to kick people out.
Yeah. And I think that flows into Wayne's question. How do you get quality tenants, and how is it managed if there's conflict within the complex?
Well, the usual rules of, there is law around neighbours being entitled to peaceful enjoyment. If there was somebody not acting in the best interests of the community, then we would need to protect the interests of the majority.
And as a private landlord, we have no moral obligation at all to keep bad tenants on, right? We absolutely want happy communities, and often it's the bad apple that spoils the bunch, right? So we want to make sure. So we will act within the full rights of the law to make sure that anyone who's misbehaving will go through the processes as we can with the law there. So just because we're trying to achieve a social good here does not mean that we will put up with bad tenants. Do Simplicity members have the first rights to rent? No, they don't. We are sort of looking at whether there should be some incentive in the future for Simplicity members. We haven't made that decision yet. We just want to see what happens when we rent these first two developments we have at Kupang and Oranga. So there's no specific advantage for Simplicity members at the moment, but we're debating this at length, and maybe there will be some incentive in the future.
With us currently building one new home a day on average, it's around 350 homes a year, and we're looking to ramp that up to 2 a day and then 3 a day. Hopefully we'll have ample supply to meet that demand.
Wouldn't that be cool if we're bringing on 2 or 3 apartments a day for people to rent? When will you offer developments in the South Island? Oh, we'd love to do that. We just need to build out the capacity. So, the obvious first place you'd look at is, would it be Christchurch or Dunedin?
Christchurch, Dunedin, and maybe Queenstown.
Okay.
It's really looking at those areas under a lot of pressure. So where housing is too expensive, and we're trying to come in, and that works for the investors as well, because if rents are higher than other parts of the country, that's a place where our model will fit very well for investor and residents.
Right. And Mark has offered us some scoria rocks for landscaping. So there you go, mate. There's a free supply if you want to. We have 69 volunteers in Simplicity. That might be the 70th. And then Magno has talked about when will Simplicity KiwiSaver investors have a preference over non-investors to become tenants? Not at this stage. We want to open it up to the whole market, so we have the highest quality tenants possible, but there may be some incentives which come along later on. Felicity says no, tire material will leak into the ground. There you go.
Oh, right.
Well, maybe.
Unless you can stabilize it and capture it somehow.
And then a question from Facebook: will all Simplicity funds be invested in these projects? No, they at the moment, while we have a development focus, they tend to be more the growth and balance funds. The conservative funds are not. As the portfolio becomes bigger and we get more of a rental income, it becomes more diversified and more cash flow focused. The conservative funds may be invested in them. And then any thoughts on the aggressive funds? I'm still waiting. Yeah, I'm sorry, I know you are, and we keep on talking about aggressive fund. Watch this space. We have made significant progress in the last few months, but I can't promise anything at the moment, but we're laying the groundwork for it. And then how does it sit with your charitable status? Is it done under a different umbrella? I understand the regulations are strictly focused on relief of poverty. Yeah, this is not the charity that runs this. This is Simplicity Living. Simplicity Living is owned by the funds, the KiwiSaver and investment funds that are invested in it. So it is designed to make a return for investors, but in the process of that money being invested in those funds, our KiwiSaver investment funds, 15% of the fees we charge go to the charity. So the charity operates completely independently. So we are running this as a commercial operation to generate a long-term stable return. There's no question about our incentives there. That's the best for the investors. But the charity will benefit from the fact that this will help grow Simplicity. From Don, what is the amount of funding listed as in our KiwiSaver managed funds? Is the first home mortgage amount? This is not about the first home mortgage, Don. That's a separate set of funding we do. To give you an example, the maximum amount in our unlisted strategies, which is Simplicity Living, mortgages, and private equity and venture capital, the maximum amount of any one fund is 7.5% of the total funds. So of that 7.5%, a different mix depending on the fund is in Simplicity Living or the mortgage or venture capital or private equity. So it's still a small amount. And it will grow over time, but we do not want this to be a dominant asset class. Thanks, Murray. It's a nice compliment. Thank you very much. And from SW, surely wet area showers are a no-brainer for the ground floor apartments. That's a key issue for accessibility and is a well-established design area. Wet area showers.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun exploring all of these sort of topics, life mark certification, pet cleaning areas, car wash areas, communal spaces, work from home. There's a huge array of topics to try to make these properties truly world class.
And one thing I can categorically guarantee you is our heart's in the right place here, right? We want to build and own these things for 100 years. We want people to be happy tenants for 100 years. So we think very much about the tenant satisfaction rather than making a short-term buck, and squeezing it, squeezing every dollar out. Can a tenant sublet? That will almost certainly be no. We want our tenants we choose to be in there. Subletting and introduces a whole lot of risks here.
I could just see a bright young entrepreneur taking a discounted rental and renting it out at market and making a profit.
Yeah, right. Murray, we got your question. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you. And I think that's about it, folks. I think we've just about run the awesome questions. Great. Thank you very much. And we're just about bang on time. So we'll say goodbye here, but thank you very much for listening in here. If you have any other questions, please contact our wonderful award-winning team. They've now, for 4 years in a row now, they've won the CanStar Award for happiest KiwiSaver and the Consumer Award for 3 years in a row. So they'll be delighted to help. Just contact them at info@simplicity.kiwi or go into the Simplicity Living website and you can ask a question there as well. And there's a lot of FAQs. And as the projects spin up and get ready and so on, we will keep on refreshing that site so there'll always be new information there. But if you register your interest, obviously we'll stay in touch. So thank you very much, Shane. Awesome. So, we'll say goodbye right now. Have a great weekend, folks. See ya. Bye.